Transformation starts with an idea. Then comes the work, the process, the commitment to keep going. This is Creators at Work. Conversations with people who make things, share ideas, and build through creativity.
Welcome everybody to Creators at Work. I'm your host, Don, and today we have got Miss Lucinda Sage. She is a lifelong storyteller. Those curiosity spans theater, literature, film, spirituality, and visual art. With a background in religious studies, theater, and education, she has spent decades teaching, directing, and learning alongside her students. She's the author of The Space Between Time, host of the Story Power podcast, and creator of the long-running Sage Woman Chronicles blog. At 72, Lucinda continues to explore stories old and new, most recently through her YouTube channel, Classic Cinema with the Sage Sisters, providing that learning never has an expiration date. Welcome to the show, Miss Lucinda. How you doing?
I'm good, Donald. It's good to be back with you.
Absolutely. So why don't we talk a little bit about what brought you into all of this creativity between podcasting and now you expanding into YouTube and everything else?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, that goes back a really long time with my parents, and I'm actually writing a memoir now called Everything I Needed to Know About Being a Human I Learned from Movies, because my parents instituted movie night. They were very busy with church work and things. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to have a night when it was all of us together doing something. But also my dad had dyslexia. My mom worked full time. So reading to us at night was not really a thing, because my dad could read, but reading out loud was really hard for him. So that was their way of engaging us in stories. And so I think I was about 6 or 7 or 8 years old when Disney started the magical world of Disney. So that's what we started with, was watching the Disney movies, and they had documentaries and that kind of thing too. But as we got older, it was always, during the commercial breaks, wow, what did you think about what happened in that last segment? What do you think's going to happen next? Yeah. Who's your favorite character? Why do you like them? That kind of thing. And that's sort of what started it all. I didn't really put that all together until I was, retired probably. And just sitting around thinking about stories and why did I start my podcast? Why? Because, at one point I was an actor, and I worked as a stage manager too when we lived in Portland. And I worked in the city had a company that they subsidized called the Musical Company. And I worked in their costume shop, and I stage managed, and I was in their shows, and but eventually I had to decide, was I going to be married or was I going to do theater? And so, that was really, I grieved losing the theater, but when we moved to Arizona, I got to teach it. So that was like the best of all worlds, because then I could direct and be involved. So, and then it just sort of expanded from there, little by little by little. It's a long story since I'm 72, almost 73 years old, but I won't go into all the details of it. But in 2020, when we were teaching through Zoom, I said, this, because I'd been thinking about doing a podcast for a long time. And that's Zoom, learning how to use Zoom. And I already knew how to use GarageBand. I said, I could do that. So, that's how that started.
I think, podcasting and I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a podcaster. I think it finds you, I really do. I don't think people search for it as much as they're driven to it. It's just kind of like you get pulled in by the gravity of the podcasting world. And once you're there, I think you're hooked in, and it just becomes a lifelong project because, as you just stated, it's going to change. It's going to grow. It's kind of like a child. It just kind of takes shape and grows from there. And now you're going into additional things and other stuff. So I'm really excited to dig into that as well.
Yeah, I'm a little too busy. Because, it would be nice to be retired sometimes and just, stay in bed, read my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Occasionally I do that, but yeah, almost every day I get up and I have something that I need to do or that I want to do. It's that I want to do. But yeah, but my sister and I love talking about movies. We do it all the time. We have always done it. So she's my youngest sister. I'm the oldest. She's the youngest. And we have lots of fun talking about movies too. So, yeah, it's just, I just have a fun life.
Absolutely. Well, you've taught drama and English for many years. What have your students taught you that you have been able to bring into your shows?
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, one thing that I always did, and when I was teaching English, I was teaching in Douglas, Arizona, which is a border town. So a lot of those students were Mexican Americans, had families still in Mexico. Some of them even came across the border to go to high school. And they're not as outspoken. So I had to kind of coax them. But when we would read a story, I would always ask them, what they thought about it. And it was always a joy to me when somebody would say something that would make me go, oh, wow, I never thought about that before.
Yeah.
And then when I started teaching at the college, and I had this class called dramatic structure where we watched movies that had been plays, most of them first, or they had been books first. And the students would do the same thing. It was just so wonderful for them to say something that I hadn't thought about before. I think one time I showed Cloud Atlas once. It's 3 hours. So it took up the whole entire, or maybe I had to split it in two. And one of the students said, each one of the timelines is a different genre. And I went, whoa, I never thought about that. I'd read the book. I'd seen the movie a whole bunch of times. So one's dystopian, one's historical, one's sci-fi, one's fantasy, one's comedy. And I had never thought of that before. And it was just like a revelation. So yeah, those are two specific. I mean, there's specific, that's one specific time, but in English class, I loved it when they would say something about the piece that I had never thought of before.
Yeah, I think that's, that is one thing I truly love about having guests and doing interview type podcasts, because that give and take that happens between the guests, and that you learn so much.
Yes.
I had a guest come on my history podcast, and I don't know where it went, but I could tell I had said something that really shocked him, and he talked about his grandfather and his grandfather's relationship with Native Americans, and he had earned their trust, and they named him a name that had meant the tall pine tree, and because he was a tall man. And then he was talking about how one of the stories that they talked about was having to rescue a mule from a pine tree. And he had wrote his book about it, and he was like, man, how do I, so he called it a fiction book because he assumed that meant that there was this mule trapped inside up in a tree, and I said, man, it's so fascinating about how that story came about, but yet your grandfather's name to them was tall pine tree. And it hit him like a ton of bricks. He's like, I never thought about that. And I could tell he was going back in his mind, wondering if now that story had something to do with his grandfather and a mule, you know? And so it is that give and take is important. Not in just podcasting, but in education as well. And so I think it's awesome that you're able to take some of that stuff and bring it to your audience now, you know? Not to mention you're now podcasting with family members. So what can be better than that is now you're involving your family in a project together. So that's even cool.
Yes, it really is cool. We love doing it. And I mean, it's just fun to pick the movies and then like we had a whole theme that we're going to be recording the last one of this theme with all stories about racism. And that's the Denzel Washington movies that you and I were talking about earlier. Sidney Poitier, 2 Denzel Washington, and then I can't remember, there was maybe some before that, but now we're doing 2 Gregory Peck ones. The one that just aired a couple of weeks ago was Gentleman's Agreement, and we're doing To Kill a Mockingbird on Saturday. And different. Yes, that was one of our dad's favorite movies. And so a lot of times we'll pick movies that were our dad's favorites. So we kind of go on themes and, next we're going to talk about strong women. We have like a really long list for that. So we're going to have to winnow it down. But because, in the 40s and 50s, there are movies about women, even 30s, who, kind of had they did their own path. They didn't follow especially during World War II, they had to pick up our grandmother was Rosie the Riveter. So, they had to pick up the slack. And so, it's just fun to pick the movies and talk about them and hopefully get people to watch them. And, but I think, we have talked about doing some more modern ones that are like 20 years old to kind of help build the audience. Our Facebook group that's associated with that channel's got about 50 or 55 people in it now. We've only been doing it a year. And so we don't have a whole lot of people on the channel, but we've been getting some more recently, 2 or 3 or 4 in the last couple of weeks. So that's fun. Yeah. And we don't do it to make money. We just do it for fun.
Yeah. Same with me. I don't do it to make money either. I think that's the misconception that everybody has. And I've heard it so much about, when I first started podcasting, the place that we worked at, me and my old first sergeant was doing this podcast and I heard people whispering in the background and they're like, well, those guys aren't going to be here much longer. And I was like, I heard it because I was like, man, does that mean I'm getting fired? What are they talking about? And they're like, yeah, once that money comes in from podcasting, they're going to be gone. And I was like, money? What money?
What are you talking about? Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Joe Rogan, you're instantly a millionaire.
Yeah. Well, and I decided not to have sponsors. I do have this thing with Libsyn where they will send people to podcasts that are similar to mine. But it's not like an ad or anything. It's just maybe a link where you can go. And I make a little, I'm talking like, oh, you earned 15 cents this month. But it's just fun. It's just fun to do it. And since I'm retired and I have some income, I don't need to. Ads irritate me, so that's why I don't want them.
Yeah.
In my podcast.
And you give up. So I've recently started a media company, and so the advertising space is a big part of that. But there's a give and take. And within my network, I'm very selective of who I allow to be a part of it as far as their shows. I've made my name through a lot of mental health type podcasts and storytelling and that stuff. And so I don't want to give up my moral compass in return for money, So
Mm-hmm.
I like being able to dictate of what kind of sponsors would even be interested in advertising with our shows. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes a long way as well. But you are right. I'm not a big fan of advertisement either. It does change a lot with podcasting because there's so many mistakes that young podcasters make with that. And
Mm-hmm.
they want to jam as many advertisements into a podcast as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality of the show diminishes by every episode, by every advertisement you put in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's tough to get that through because anybody that does this, as you know, you're going to spend money, you're not going to make money, and
Right.
especially starting out. And it's one of those things where you have to ask yourself, why did you come into the space to begin with? And for me, it wasn't about the money.
Right. Me either. I was still teaching part-time at the college when I started it. So yeah, I had that income. And then I did have my income from the Arizona retirement system went up from teaching. I had
Mhm.
some of that, some income from that. But then when I stopped teaching and I had Social Security, then I was, and now my husband's retired too. So yeah, we are comfortable.
Yeah.
And we don't need a whole bunch.
And it just creates headaches. So
Yeah. I mean, I could do that through Libsyn and choose specific sponsors or advertisers that I align with, but it just feels icky to me. I don't know. I didn't want to.
It can definitely be. So let me ask you this: with writing and podcasting, and what inspired the space between time, and what called you back to write a sequel to it?
Oh, well, when I was substitute teaching, this was before I got my master's. So
Okay.
when we first moved to Arizona, we didn't have jobs. We were stupid. uh, not necessarily, but we had sold our house in Portland to take a trip around the world, and we still had money, So when we came
Yeah.
to Arizona, we did it. Both sets of parents lived in the state, not super close to where we settled, but my mom and dad were on the western side of the state. We live on the eastern side, and it was 5.5 hours to go over and visit them. But and Barry's mom and dad lived in the Phoenix area, so that's 3.5 hours. But at least we were close enough that if something happened, we could go see them because they were getting older, and my dad had heart disease. So I forgot your question. Duh.
Oh, that's okay. What inspired the space between time, and then what
Yes.
called you back to write a sequel to it?
So when I was subbing, I started the story because my dad was my mentor, and I knew that he had heart disease and that he wasn't going to be around forever. And I started a story about a father and a daughter. Well, when I started teaching full-time, because I got a couple of long-term, all-year sub-assignments in the special ed department. I knew nothing about special ed, but somehow they saw something in me and wanted me to do that. So I had to stop because, when you're teaching full-time and you're grading papers and, writing IEPs, I had to learn how to write an IEP. I didn't know how to do that. I had to stop writing it. Well, so zip forward to realizing that I wanted to be a writer and quitting teaching full-time in Douglas, which was an hour away. I had to get up at 4:00 in the morning so I could get ready to leave at 6 to go to teach. And then if I was directing a play, I'd get home at 5:30, 6:00 and go to bed at 8.
Yeah.
So, but when I stopped teaching there and I started teaching at the college part-time, I had the time to write. Well, I didn't really know how to write very well, and that's why I started the blog, Sage Woman Chronicles. And one day I decided to pick up that old story because my dad had died by then, and I missed him. And but of course, it morphed into something completely different.
Yeah.
And I joined a writers group and got some suggestions and met a couple of women who, as I got closer to the finishing the rough draft, they helped me shape it. They read it and helped me shape it. And it turned out to be a 2-timeline story. And it's the two women, Morgan in the past and Jenna in the present, are related by blood. So it's Jenna's 3 times great grandmother going on the Oregon Trail, which I happen to be an Oregon Trail descendant. So that's why that came into on both sides of my family. She goes on the Oregon Trail to Oregon the year that it becomes a state, which is 1859. So it's California and Oregon during the Civil War on the West Coast. And then there's all this territory in between the Midwest and the East. And I happen to be somebody who I kind of knew where I wanted it to start and end, but I didn't know really much about the middle of it. And it seemed like every morning or often I'd wake up in the morning right between sleep and waking, I'd get an idea. Oh, I need to go put this in the story.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. And then I always wanted to write a second book because I wanted both of them to be involved in their various women's movements. And I found out, Morgan in the past lives in Oregon still, and she's married and has children. Well, as I was doing the research, I found out that Susan B. Anthony traveled to Oregon. So it was like, oh, I get to put that in the book. How fun.
Yeah.
But I started it right after I finished the rough draft for The Space Between Time, the second book. It's called Time's Echo. And there was nothing for Jenna to do in 2014. So I just wrote Morgan's story. And then when the Harvey Weinstein thing happened, I went, oh, now she's got something to do.
This show is part of the Barracks Media Network, built by veterans, creators, and storytellers who believe stories change lives. Barracks Media produces podcasts, books, and digital content that amplify voices worth hearing. We help creators launch, grow, and monetize their message without losing their soul. If you've got a story in you, or a show in your head, go to barracksmedia.com and start building something that lasts.
But of course, it got worse and worse and worse and worse. So it has taken me a really long time to write that. But now I have, I've sent it off to my niece and another podcast guest who's a ghostwriter, and she writes her own books. And they're looking at it and going to give me comments and feedback on it. I might give it to some of my prolific writers' life friends. I joined that last February too, and it's a great community for writers. And I have an event where I talk to people about marketing their book as a podcast guest.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have one, Films for Writers, where we talk about films with writers in them and what's their process and what can you learn from writing. Yeah. So tomorrow night we're doing Films for Writers, and we're talking about Julie and Julia, about the woman who blogged. She took Julia Child's recipe book and did all of the recipes in the book in 1 year. It was more than 300, it was 400 and something recipes. She did all of them in 1 year.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a fun story. Yeah. So the idea just sort of came from that way back when my dad was still alive, and I started that.
Yeah. This next question is going to educate myself a little bit as well, because you taught yourself GarageBand to launch Story Power.
Oh, right.
I have tried to use GarageBand, and it is not easy. It's not an easy software to use. can you talk a little bit about what was that process like to learn how to use it? And then how do you use it to go along with Story Power?
Well, I am very fortunate. My husband's a techie.
Okay.
He's a graphic artist, but he's also a Mac geek, because when we lived in Portland and the Mac first came out, most of the programs were for graphic arts, and he was working as a graphic artist. And so his boss bought these and sent them to school. And I said I was a Macintosh widow because he read all the magazines and all the books. But so whenever I would get stuck, I could ask him for some help. But the other thing is that there are videos. I think Apple has a bunch of tutorials about how to use GarageBand. And I think I watched some of those too. I only use the basics because for me, I did choose some music from their, library of little clips, music clips. For the opening and closing. And I had to have Barry kind of help me with that, get the loops, how to use that. But mostly I have certain settings I just use for the voice, and I just record the voice. And then when I put it all together, I can adjust the settings. And so I just use the basics of it.
Yeah.
I'm not creating music to put on YouTube or which is a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
But
it's not an easy program. I like I said, I have tried using it, and man, there is a learning curve to it. That is for sure.
Yeah. And I had used it for something else before I started podcasting. So I already knew how to use it a little bit. I can't remember what I used it for, but anyway, doesn't matter. But there are other apps out there. You don't have to use GarageBand. You can use something else that's simpler.
Yeah, I use a little bit of I use music for some of the background stuff, an AI music thing called Suno. And then I use 11 Labs to help with some of the intro voices. And then I run it through a program called Audacity just to make my adjustments and change pitch and tempo and all that stuff.
Yeah. Now that is another thing.
This episode is brought to you by Barracks Media, where your online presence becomes a real asset. Barracks Media builds professional websites for podcasters, creators, authors, and small businesses who are ready to be taken seriously. Not templates, not cookie-cutter pages, real platforms built to grow with you. Whether you're launching a podcast, promoting a book, or building a brand, your website should work as hard as you do. We design sites that convert listeners into followers and followers into clients. Visit barracksmedia.com and turn your idea into a home on the web.
When I put the intro, outro together with the podcast part, the voice part, and I actually now started doing using the video. When I record video, I on Zoom. Now I've put it all on YouTube too. So I have 2 channels on YouTube, one for Story Power. But once I get all that put together, the audio, I send it over to Barry. He converts it for me so that I can upload it to Libsyn. Because it has to be compressed. I don't understand all this stuff, but it has to be compressed. And so he does that little thing for me. And then I forgot what he uses. I use Levelator too. After I get it all put together, I level it so that it's not, so that
you don't get these high pitches and
right. And I also do that in GarageBand. I use the what's it called? There's a thing where you can lower or raise the audio part. Well, so I use that too. Before I put it through Levelator and before I send it to Barry, I make sure that it's not too loud Because
Yeah.
you can always make it louder, but
Yep.
sometimes it's harder to make it softer
Yep.
if it's too loud. So, but those are just things that I kind of learned early on. Barry helped me with, or I watched tutorials.
I think as a creator, you know, that's the one thing that we all have in unique is we all have our creativity, which differs from person to person to person.
Mm-hmm.
But we
Mm-hmm.
all have that little skill set of how to find tools and learn how to use them and how to incorporate them in our vision when we're making our project. So that's why I was asking. You're one of the few people that I've had on that uses GarageBand, and it's a super powerful tool if you can use it. It's just very tough. Same with me. A lot of people don't like what I use to edit videos. I use Adobe Premiere, and it's not an easy tool to use.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken me a long time of, like you said, watching tutorials and everything else. And now that I understand it and can use it, there's a lot of cool stuff that can be done. But there's easier programs out there, that's for sure.
Yeah. I use them, the one that Mac, what's it called? I'm looking at the icon for videos. My brain, I'm a little tired. Yeah, so I use that to edit the video. I taught myself how to use that too. Although, you know, again, when I got stuck, I would ask Barry, or he'd direct me to some tutorials for it.
Yeah.
So iMovie is what it is. iMovie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have used that before. Yep. That's another good program.
I don't know how it compares to Adobe. I've never used the Adobe stuff. My husband used all the Adobe stuff for graphics.
Yeah.
But he's decided he's going to start using some of the other newer, because it's cheaper. And now that he's not working, you know, he doesn't really need to pay for those huge subscriptions.
Adobe is not cheap. That is for sure.
No,
I agree. So let me ask you this: what keeps you curious? I mean, at 72 and running all these different platforms, it's definitely got to be a curiosity and a creativity side to you that's pushing this.
Yeah, I think it has to do with, I'm very much like my father, and the reason he taught himself how to read, he quit school when he was like 7th or 8th grade because they said, "Oh, you're stupid," and this was in the 30s. You're stupid. You'll never amount to anything. And then he taught himself how to read because he wanted to know everything. So when I was growing up, I remember he would watch the morning news shows before he went off to work. When he got home, he would watch the 5 o'clock news, and he would watch the 6 o'clock news, whichever it was. I can't remember. In it's different time zones, do it at different times. And we lived on the West Coast. And then he'd watch the 11 o'clock news because he wanted to know everything.
Yeah.
And he read, the books that he read were like books about the founding fathers or about history, or he rarely read novels. I remember he did read, though, Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code. And he was like, my brother and I both studied religious studies in college. And so he's asking us all these questions about, now, wait a minute, is this really true about Jesus and Mary? And, so he just wanted to know everything. And I think I just kind of got it from him. If he could have gone to college, it would have been really difficult for him to do that. But if he could have, I think he would have loved to have been a professor at a college or a teacher.
You know, that makes sense, because even myself, I don't watch a lot of news anymore. But if I was an adult back then, I definitely would have. And I don't watch news now because it has changed so much in what you're getting. However, My movie choice is documentaries. I love listening about history and learning about history.
Mm-hmm.
I do like, I watch a lot of YouTube videos that are more about spirituality
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that,
Me
meditation,
too.
all those types of things. That's usually how I end my day
Yeah.
is by unwinding with that type of stuff. But so I completely understand what you're saying about your dad, because
Mm-hmm.
sounds
Mm-hmm.
like me. It sounds like what I would have done at that time frame as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was Walter Cronkite and
Yeah.
Huntley and Brinkley, and those guys were actual. I think we even watched Robert R. Murrow too. Those guys were actual journalists,
Yeah.
and there are still some actual journalists, but yeah, it's sort of become entertainment really more
Yeah.
now. But
Absolutely.
I grew up in this really exciting time when it's the civil rights movement and the space race and unfortunately all those assassinations, JFK,
Yeah.
RFK, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, all that was, and the anti-war protests and
Yeah.
so that was all really, it was for me, a highly sensitive person. It was really difficult sometimes to watch that stuff,
Yeah.
but it informed my, who I was because,
Right.
wait a minute. Why are we fighting this war in Vietnam?
Yeah.
So, and I do the same thing, watching YouTube videos. I watch a lot of spiritual things too. And I also have some that I watch people analyzing movies, or there's one guy that I really like. He's British and he analyzes all of Jane Austen's stories
Mm-hmm.
and compares them to the movies and the, miniseries. And so people who analyze books and movies, I watch those kind of things too.
Yeah.
And we saw a really interesting documentary the other night about Ed Sullivan and how he really pushed the boundaries of having Black people on his show. He insisted on it. And, a lot of times people in the South were like, yeah, you shouldn't have these people on your show. But he did it anyway. And it was a really interesting documentary about him.
Yeah.
Because we used to watch the Ed Sullivan Show when I was a kid.
Yep. I think I want to say that my parents did too, because I remember them talking. I can't remember what they said about the Ed Sullivan Show, but I do remember talking to my mom when, I would ask questions like, well, what did you guys watch as a kid, and what was it that and she would talk about these radio shows that they would wait to come on, and then they would listen to the radio. And one of the things that I do remember her talking about was the Ed Sullivan Show. I don't remember what she said about it, but I do remember her talking about it.
Yeah, that one. My dad also liked the Red Skelton Show. Carol Burnett.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So, but they also watched Star Trek with us.
yeah,
yeah, too. So,
well,
Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
The Mission Impossible, the television show, Mission Impossible.
Yeah. The Bionic Man. I remember that as a kid.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was it's no wonder why I'm such a car freak guy now. But, I remember growing up watching the Dukes of Hazzard, and, everybody's like, oh yeah, you like Daisy. No, I really like the car.
The cars. Yeah. Well, and what was that other one where the car could talk to the guy?
You're talking about the Love Bug?
No, it was like a sports car kind of a thing. And
a Knight Rider. Yeah.
Knight Rider, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Knight Rider, right?
Yep.
So,
well, Ms. Lucinda, where can everybody find your shows and your blogs and your book and everything that you're creating?
Well, if they go to Sage Woman Chronicles on WordPress, it's at sagewoman.life
Okay.
is the URL. And I post the story power and classic cinema things there. I haven't written a blog in quite a while because I'm writing a book and I have these other,
Yeah.
I have these events that I do for Prolific Writers Life. But that's the place. And then you can find story power. It's story -power. You have to make sure it's story -power.
Okay.
On Apple, Spotify, I think it's on Amazon. It's on YouTube. Where else is it? On my Sage Woman Chronicles WordPress.
Okay.
I think it's a couple of other places, but I can't think now.
Well, I will make sure that we get the links and everything and definitely get them to your website. They'll all be down there in the bottom for everybody to check it out and subscribe. Don't you all be lazy. If you're going to go watch, you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, y'all. So I think the stuff that you're doing is amazing, and I'm so glad you're able to come on my show. I enjoyed being on yours as well. I hope everybody that watches this goes and checks out the stuff that she's doing. She's doing some really, really cool stuff. So thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Donald. And I'm glad your network is growing. That's so great.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's been a blessing. That is for sure. So y'all take care out there. Y'all be safe. And we will catch y'all next time at Creators at Work.
You've been listening to Creators at Work, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. Discover more creative conversations across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.